Hello, Danielle McCarthy here, and today I'm going to explain to you about my paper that I did my final presentation on. And we're talking about school violence and the psychodynamic and developmental theories that went along with it. Now, as I will go on, I am showing you a Prezi via right now. And I've also left a link for it as well so that you can also view it at a later time if you wanted to see a little bit more. Now, with that said, I will continue and tell you about how school violence is prevalent in schools across America today and is really high importance in schools in not only the nation but also worldwide. Now, it's a very important social issue in today's world because it's kind of like an epidemic at this point. Now, up until this point, we've seen a lot of different modes of violence happening in our schools since the 90s. Now, some that we can recall very easily are the ones like Columbine and Sandy Hook Elementary School, where there were active shooters within the building. But I don't only go over active shooters in that extreme, but also something as simple as people think of teasing and playground fighting or mockery. So humiliation in any form is really considered bullying. So if it's repetitive and consistent and it makes the other person feel victimized, then it is an act of bullying. And nowadays, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled out by counselors and school administrators all around. So I'm going to take you through my Prezi that I've created here, and hopefully you can follow along. So we have school violence, bullying, and the psychodynamic perspective mostly. So, what is school violence? Now, school violence is a problem of the larger community which needs collaboration between school teachers, parents, law enforcement, and mental health care providers to find a solution. So it's not only the problem of the children, but it's also something that needs to be fully incorporated with the whole town, with your school administrators, with your school teachers, with every piece of staff member that is in that school building. Okay, so we can't just do it alone. Parents need help too. So school violence is any form of violent activities in the school premises. This includes bullying and physical abuses, verbal abuses, shootings, etc. School violence can also be defined as anything that can cause physical harm on an individual, student, or any staff in the school. Most people believe that it is mainly just school shootings because what's shown in the media, but there are many more forms of violence in the schools. Now, there are types of school violence. Now, there are many forms to school violence. Now, the most common being the physical abuse, okay? Now, there is also verbal bullying and cyberbullying. Threats, weapons, if they bring gang activity, intimidation, feeling like you need to dominate another victim or another child or student, any form of physical fighting, sexual harassment, bringing drugs or other harmful components, vandalism, robbing, or stealing is all encompassed in the act of school violence. Now, why is this a problem? Now, it is a major problem, as I said earlier, but this occurs and can occur at any given school, and school violence can lead to an unsafe environment, whereas individuals do not want to attend, and then that creates more anxiety with our children in today's schools, so that they don't even want to come to school, and that becomes another problem. It also leads to academic failures and kind of eliminates the successes that we want for our children. Now, this is a safety hazard for all students and staff, and schools should be a place where everyone can feel safe, you know. So what can we do to kind of alleviate that? We need to evaluate and see what's going on with this student, and it's really on an individual basis once we figure out who the bully is. Now, there's always a bully, a victim, and a bystander. Now, the bystander is very capable of sticking up for the victim, but just doesn't and chooses not to because they are saying they don't want to get involved. But there should be a time when they get involved. Now, so if you see little Timmy who's getting beat up on the playground, Johnny should step in and say, hey guys, leave him alone, I'm going to tell the teacher something. But a lot of kids don't. So those are called bystanders. Now, we need to prevent it by having staff really cognizant of these bullying type of scenarios and professional developments, and being fully understanding of what is happening in their school buildings. Now, they need to be knowledgeable of the violence and what to look for. They should have a zero tolerance act for bullying. Bystander elimination, where we get these kids out of the mode that I don't have to tell anyone, because they should. Okay, they should have a non-coercive discipline plan so that it's not just negative and saying, you did this, you're getting this punishment. We also need to reward the students a lot more so that they are more likely and more prone to make the better choice, so that they get rewarded and things are fun when people are kind, and promote the kindness and not just, the negativity. So we should also have peer and adult mentors in the school buildings, because if the children see that the adults are not bullies and the adults know how to act, then it is a better, safe place for everyone involved. Now, there's are also physical education programs where it promotes self-defense, like in martial arts, but also having a team, like in soccer and football. The coaches should be there to display how they should act and how they should stick up for one another and be that family, be that team, but also knowing how to stick up for yourself if a bully is targeting you. So, they need to have an anti-violence program. A lot of children become bullies because of this upbringing that a lot of mistreated and abused children have come from abusive families. Now, upon my research, I have found a lot about there being many studies done that there were a lot of physically and verbally abused children who then later in their life became violent and abusive bullies themselves. So, a lot of times that this happens, it's all about the fact that they didn't have the proper upbringing and the parents were similar to the bullying child. So I think it comes down to the psychodynamic, where we individualize the client and understand how they came about and what happened in their childhood that brought this on. Now, this is more of a reactive approach, because you have to see the bullying happen already. So that's my only that's a little weakness. But it is a strength because we can individualize and understand where this child came from and fully incorporate that into rewiring their brains so that they understand how to move forward in life and not by putting others down. So this is really useful for social work because it can be used in clinical theory and seen in the human behavior theory. So we also find that this is kind of part of the development of life, because children, they need to develop moral values. And if they have a not so great childhood, their moral development isn't on par. So they don't have pro-social skills. They're more likely to be angry. They're more likely to see violence and not happiness. And usually they're very negative. But also in the other notion, they might not be super negative. But in one of the studies, it showed that the maltreated child, their brain activity was sparking off more by seeing anger than happiness. Whereas in normal minds, anger and happiness, you have the same amount of spark. So that was very interesting that I saw within my research. Now, upon many of the findings, like this acts of bullying doesn't only happen in children, it also happens for adults too. And I, personally have been a victim of bullying, and it's like you make jokes about it and saying like, oh, this one's a mean girl. Well, yeah, some of the administrators that I've worked for were kind of that way, but you need to not be just a bystander or a victim. You need to evaluate things and let the right people know what's going on. Now, we also have avoidant bystanding, and that's where a lot of school districts kind of come into play because they are in denial that there is bullying in their schools just because of political reasons, and they don't want to, really let everyone know about it. So we'll continue with this. So in order to fix the problem, they need to have a lot of different buy-ins and everything like that, and you can view this later on your own time because I'm kind of like draining with the time. So we have to have a system in place that takes 3 to 5 years, and a psychiatrist would come in to consult with the entire staff, and the entire staff has to be, 75% of it needs to be on board so that it will work throughout the entire system. Okay, we need to pay close attention to internal, external, like power struggles and things like that, because that's what's happening. There's a power struggle, and the students are kind of thinking that they run the show. So there's a dynamic there. That's a problem. So the psychodynamic perspective is good for remediation. They understand their emotions once they're coming out with everything, and this is concerned with just the individual, needs and drives and what motivates that person's emotions. Okay, you can view a video about Sandy Hook. It was actually gut-wrenching. I dare you not to cry or tear up. Now, study shows it has been shown that mistreated children from dysfunctional families are prime candidates for misguided emotional development. So that's like what I said, they don't have the pro-social. Now, here are the numbers from the CDC. Now, youth violence in 2014, over 4,300 young people ages 10 to 24 were victims of homicide. So that's in America in 2014. Also, in 2015, they took a sample of youth in grades 9 through 12, and over 22% reported being in a physical fight or something at school. 22%, over 22%. So that's a lot. Okay, there's a lot of school violence too. 7.8 reported being in a physical fight on school property in the 12-month survey. 10.3% male students and 5% female students reported being in a physical fight on, school property. People have carried weapons and guns and being threatened of injury. So we have a lot of schools that do start carrying metal detectors now. It's a sad thing. I remember in the news not too long ago where a student brought in a gun because he wanted to threaten a bully. So there you have it. There's a lot going on in there, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would recommend you watch this second video. Absolutely watch the second video. Let me know what your thoughts are about it, because it blew my mind when I first found it. So, Danielle McCarthy here for final presentation. It's been a great quarter so far, so let's end it with a bang. Good job. Thank you for watching.